Today, I'm evaluating two crap strategies. They both start with 44 across, but one of them is going to press more aggressively than the other. My name is Matt, and I run crap simulations. If you're interested in crap strategies and you want to know how much you could actually win or lose and what bankroll you need and a whole lot more information, this is the place you want to be. Go ahead and click the like and subscribe button, and let's dive in. We're going to do things a little bit differently than I normally do on this channel. We're going to actually look at the full simulation report. If you like this kind of data and you play craps, you definitely want to check out my custom simulations. You'll get all of this data and a whole lot more, and I'd love to talk to you about your strategy. The way that I generate the data is that I program 100,000 bots to play the strategy over 10 shooters. That ends up being 1 million hands, and a total of 8.5 million throws the dice. And the reason for that is because on average, each shooter is going to hang on to the dice for 8.52 throws. So that's our overall data set. Here are the steps of the strategies that we're going to look at. The original version is my last video, so I'm going to put a link up here in case you want to check it out. I'll also put a link at the end of this video. In the original version, what we did is we had $44 inside per shooter, and we're going to collect on the first 3 hits, and then we're going to go into this pressing and collecting strategy. Then we'll add the 4 and the 10, and at the end, we're going to just alternate collecting and pressing from there. In the more aggressive version, this time we're still doing 44 inside per shooter, but we're only going to collect the first hit, and then we're going to start pressing. We get to the buy 4 and 10 at hit 6 and 7, and after hit 8, then we're going to switch into this alternating collecting and pressing. So you notice what happens here is we're taking about half the time to get to the same point. Let's start off by looking at the hands and see how often these 100,000 bots won or lost. It's actually somewhat rare that you're going to see a win on any individual hand. If you look here, we've got 17.7% on the aggressive strategy, and on the original strategy, 23.7% were winners on individual hands. Most of the time, these strategies are gonna lose. Now, what's interesting about this, though, is that they tend to lose a lot, but when they lose, they don't lose a lot of money. So when we look at the magnitudes, we start to see what's going on here. When the bots lose on the aggressive strategy, on average, they're only losing $36. When they lose on the original strategy, they're only losing $26. So their losses are pretty small, but when they win, their average wins are actually quite large. And you see that there's a big difference between this, and we're going to see this even more in some of the other charts later on. Notice that on the original strategy, the average win is $73, but it goes up to $146 with the more aggressive strategy. And that's doubling, right? That's doubling the average win. On this side, we have the medians, and the medians don't show as impressive a win. The reason for that is because these are long tails. Most of the money that's won in this strategy is won only on a few hands. We can see that a lot more when we look at the distributions down here. Look at these long tails. Very few wins, but when they win, they tend to win a lot. And notice there's a lot in this area. There's more wins over on the aggressive strategy because it's being a little more aggressive in terms of the way that it pushes. Also notice here, the losses below 0 are very small. They're all in just one bin, less than $50. And that's because the players are only risking $44 per shooter. The median is double when it comes to the aggressive strategy as compared to the original strategy, but it's not a whole lot of money. Same thing with the mean, just a few dollars. It starts to pull away at the 95th percentile, and the max is, $1,000, almost $1,500 more than the original strategy. So that's what's coming from that more aggressive pressing strategy. Looking at the overall outcomes by session now, the proportion of winners has increased to 32%. It's still 2-to-1 against winners, and that's just the nature of this strategy, but we've definitely improved the odds by playing for multiple shooters. When we look at the profit and loss per session, we see that when we go into the aggressive strategy, we have the opportunity to win more money. So it goes from $218 to $372. Now, the average loss is also lower. The medians come in very close because it is a relatively conservative strategy. Most of the time, they're going to be pretty tightly packed around that zero baseline. Here's the histogram. Again, we see a long tail going off to the end, and the tail is longer for the aggressive strategy. When we look at the losses, notice that the losses here are centered a little bit further to the left. And the reason for that is there's more opportunity to lose money because you're pressing and you're pressing, and there's a greater chance of losing all of that money. What a lot of us want to know is if we actually went into a casino to play this strategy, how much would it actually cost us out of our own pocket? When we first look at it by hand, everything's really simple. There's only $44 that was out of pocket for each individual hand. When it comes to a session, again, a session is of 10 individual hands. A good portion of them still were only $44, and that's because they won on their first hand and they were able to recycle that money for all their subsequent hands. The median, almost $250 versus $163. The max, $435 and $426. One thing that's interesting here is the maximums. So it's not $440, which is the theoretical maximum, and that's what would happen if you had a 0.7 out 10 times in a row. That's a very rare occurrence. Not to say it couldn't happen, but it didn't happen in any of the 100,000 sessions that our bots played in this simulation. The shape of the two histograms is also interesting. Now, on the x-axis, we have the amount that was out of pocket, and on the y-axis is the percent of those 100,000 bots. Notice on the original strategy, it has this kind of shape where the maximum volume is down here between $200 and $250. While the aggressive strategy is definitely pulled more out to the right, where the mode here is going to be between $300 and $350. And the reason for that is the original is it's collecting so much more often, so it's pocketing so much more money, and those wins can be used on later hands where they might be just losing that $44. So instead of it coming out of their own pocket, they're actually using the winnings that they banked when they were collecting earlier on. We can also take this data and extrapolate it by hour. So assuming that you're at a table where the average is 80 throws per hour, the 75th percentile, meaning 75% or fewer bots, spent 359 versus almost $250 with the original strategy. So that's what it cost them to play. Return on outlay is an interesting one because it tells you how often that the bots were able to multiply their money. So we can see about 1 out of 5 times the bots were able to double their money or more. These are cumulative values. About 14, 15, 16%, they were able to triple their money. And even just a few percent, 4 and 2.2%, they were able to win 10 times their outlay. The betting power metric is where this strategy really shines. So for every $100 buy-in, these strategies are making between $830 and $973 in total bets, which of course is outstanding. And the reason for that is because so many of the bets are made from previous winnings. This is the kind of strategy where there's a very small amount of actual money coming into the table, but when all of those really great rolls are happening, those are happening all on the casino's money. So this gets an outstanding rating. We're going to learn a little bit more about this when we look at the comp section later. A lot of people like to play casino games because of the comps that they're going to earn. With this strategy, we're looking at just under 4% of their money is going to be returned in comps, which is definitely a basic rating. Now, how do we come up with that? Well, what happens is when you buy in, you're buying in for $44, but you're making all of these repeated bets. So you might win, you might collect, you might win again, and so on. So much of that money is being recycled. And if you look at the aggressive strategy, our rated action, the median is over $2,000. And remember, those buy-ins are just $247, $163 as their median. So a lot of the money that is being placed on that table is actually coming from kind of recycled house money. So in this case, the strategy does very well. The session theoretical loss and the median is $36, so that's what the casino will expect to make from all of these sessions. Daily theoretical loss, so this is basically assuming that you're playing for 4 hours at 80 rolls per hour, is $139. And then if you have kind of an average comp rate, somewhere around 25%, then you might be earning $35 in comps. We're going to see later that the house edges for these strategies are relatively low, so the casino may not be willing to give you as many comps as you might earn if you were playing like slots or double or triple zero roulette or things like that. This is a little bit different than what the pit crew is going to do, because they're going to have to estimate your average bets. They might miss some wagers, and they're also going to give you broad house edge categories because they can't track every single bet. But for me, I like to track every single bet, and then from there, we can estimate what a pit crew might actually rate you at, and that's what's going to drive your comps in the real world. Now let's look at table conditions. So both of these are hot table strategies. Almost 80%, over 80% win rates when these are hot tables. They do very bad when the tables are cold, and not so great when the tables are choppy. So these ones really, really like to have hot tables. Here's some information about the playing experience. The first thing we'll look at is the hit frequency. So this is telling us how often there's any win on any of your bets on the table. About 35% of the rolls are going to have some win, some kind of place where the dealer is giving you money. This is also a very mildly volatile strategy. The bets are relatively simple, and when they're only pressing by $22 each time, so they both get a mild volatility rating. If you're interested in seeing the entire report, I make it available to my ThinkTank subscribers. Just go to thinktank.dicedata.info. You can sign up and subscribe there and get access to this report and all the other reports for my other YouTube videos. These charts show us what percentage of bots are actually in profit and how long it took them to get there. So on the x-axis, we have the throw number, and on the y-axis, we have the percentage of bots that are in profit at that throw. And what we can do is look at the milestones. So on the original strategy, after 11 throws, 50% of the bots are in profit. And at 16 throws, then 90% of the bots are in profit. It takes a little bit longer with the aggressive strategy, and of course that's because it's being more aggressive with pressing and it's not collecting as early and as frequently as the original strategy. The black line indicates how many shooters actually survived to that throw number. So you can see everybody survives up to throw number 2 because that's just the nature of the game. You set a point and then you 7 out. That's the shortest roll you can have. And very few survive up until the later numbers. Now let's see the data from the casino's point of view in the house metrics. The bots bet a total of $229 million in the aggressive strategy and $137 million in the original strategy. You can see the won and lost here, and the house take for the aggressive strategy almost $4 million. For the original strategy, just $2.7 million. And that equates to an overall house edge that's lower for the aggressive strategy, just 1.722% versus 1.970%. So you might wonder, why is the aggressive strategy showing a lower house edge? The reason for that is because the aggressive strategy is making larger bets, but they're making larger bets more often on the 6 and 8 because those are more likely to roll, which means they're more likely to hit, which means they're more likely to get boosted than the 5 or 9. The 6 and 8 have a house edge of about 1.52%. 5 and 9 have a house edge of 4%. So that the more money that gets piled onto those 6 and 9s means a lower overall blended house edge. But either way, you're still looking at a fairly low house edge for both cases. It's 1.72, 197. They're both below 2. They're pretty good strategies when it comes to overall house edge. Not the lowest you can get, but still pretty good. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think about this format. I thought that it would be more fun to go through the actual report and see what the actual data looks like, and it actually saves me a little bit of time because I don't have to animate everything, so I get to show you more data than I would normally. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. As always, good luck at the table, and thanks for watching.